everyone. I'm Dan Albers, and welcome to This Week in Anderson on the Big Eye Sports Podcast and USBN Sports. And always, I'm joined with my co-host Steve Ellis. And Steve, our next athlete was just a great athlete, excelled on both the football and the basketball court. And he happened, as we were talking off air, we let him know that he was in our most recently top 10 quarterbacks in Anderson High School history. And Steve, Kenny Riddell was a pretty darn good athlete at Anderson High School.
Really good athlete, Danny. And I'll tell you, well deserving to be in that top 10. And, he may be humble enough to be surprised by that, but he was a heck of an athlete, heck of a quarterback, and had great success. And I'm sure even Vince Terriano would speak highly of him as well.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. So as we said, is joining us is our guest as Kenny Riddell. And Kenny, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting to get the touch base with you and everything. And so we always kind of do this with everybody, just touch base and let everybody know, what it was like back in the days growing up in Anderson Township, and then what side. We always talk about the Summit side or the, whatever. So just tell everybody where you're growing up in Anderson, what side you lived on.
So I moved to Anderson in third grade. I went to Air Elementary, and I did not grow up on the Summit side. I don't know what our side's called, but Regions Park, which hopefully is familiar to some of you. But yes. I grew up, in the same house and from third grade on, and can't say enough about Anderson and the experience I had.
And growing up like that, in that area, did you have like a lot of the guys that we talked to said just how much that the neighborhood kids, you go out and you play for, is it kind of same way with you too, growing up like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember JD Collar grew up real close to me. We played basketball, football, baseball, anything we could compete at, we did. And that carried over into Anderson. And, I was lucky enough to have parents that, took me to a lot of Anderson games as a kid. So before I even got there, I knew, all the legends and a lot of people that you're probably interviewing now. I used to go to see Jason Druso and the Andriatis brothers, and Joey Sherrill was someone that I always thought was a great player. And the basketball side, same thing. Adam Norwell and Dave Dickey. We used to go to those games when I was a kid, and I think it made me appreciate it more when I was actually at Anderson playing on those teams.
Yep, no doubt about it.
So, Kenny, you said when you were growing up with alongside of JD, you played some baseball too. What other sports did you play growing up, and what was your favorite?
So I played baseball, basketball, football, tennis, and golf, all competitively, which, nowadays, especially here in Florida where I live, you're asked to specialize, as early as, 6, 7 years old. And
right.
For me, it was the opposite. I played everything. And I think that helped me in my athletic career. I have to say, I loved basketball. That was a sport that I just always thought it was a beautiful game and fun to play. And then my second favorite sport might have been golf. And thankfully it was, because I here in Florida, I still play today. I love to compete on the golf course, and certainly up there on the list of favorites.
So when you were at Anderson, did you play golf at Anderson too, or did you just play basketball?
No, I didn't play golf, but I was I think courted by the golf coach for a few years. I played a lot with Brian Matlock. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he was a good golfer, and we used to play a lot, but didn't play at Anderson. I did play varsity tennis as a freshman and sophomore. Wow. Our coach was Dan Bartholomew.
That's right.
And so I was straight up onto the varsity. My brother was actually a senior and I was a freshman, and we played doubles together, which was a great memory.
Cool.
And had some success in tennis, but eventually focused on basketball, where I played 4 years on varsity, as you know, Coach Ellis.
Yep.
And then football, I started as a junior as a safety, and as a senior, I was the quarterback.
Wow. All right. Well, let's get into basketball first. Sorry, Danny.
Sure.
Let's talk. So obviously, as you said, I got to help coach you. You're playing for Coach Brandy. You had gone through a transition there, like your freshman year. You guys, you were fortunate enough to play varsity because you were talented enough. But you had a really good group coming through, and you could just see how good you guys were going to be by the time you were seniors. So talk a little bit about that experience and playing for Coach Brandy during that time period.
Well, so Coach Brandy, gosh, he just always believed in me. I remember he and Coach Bartholomew, I'm sure you were there, Coach Ellis, would come to my 7th and 8th grade games. And he and I had a relationship, real close, way beyond before I even got there. And I think that speaks to his, how much he cares about the kids coming up. And so freshman year, I said to myself, well, maybe if I'm fortunate enough, I'll play some JV and definitely, the freshman team. And first day of practice, coach said, no, you're on the starting 5. Let's go do this. And, we struggled freshman year. It was definitely, you could say a rebuilding year. But then my sophomore year, we had Pete Corey and I were definitely emerging. We had a decent my sophomore year. Junior year, Pete was one of the best players in the city.
Correct.
I think I was, up there as well. And then JD Collar was very talented. And we had just a pretty deep class of people that were, all levels. And I think Pete and I, just leading the team, we had a lot of success that year. Senior year was when Chris Norwell arrived. And, gosh, I think I thought I was going to be probably the best player in the city as a senior. And I quickly realized that Chris was the best player in the city. So I think, there were moments that year where it would be halftime and we would be talking about what to do. And I would just say, we just got to get the ball to Chris and get out of the way. And it was just so obvious that he was something really special. And I actually watched your video with him, and I did not appreciate, all the success that he had later after Anderson, but boy, it was evident, when I was playing with him that, he was something special, and he's definitely the best basketball player that I've ever seen.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, he's the all-time leading scorer in Anderson history, and
good for him.
As you got to play alongside him, knowing how tough he was and how competitive and everything, he was fun to watch. When he even got bigger, and stronger, like his senior year, I mean, guys just feared him. Other teams just feared him. It was pretty fun to watch. But the one thing I want to ask, Kenny, is your senior year, and you guys, got better, like you said, each year, and the experience that you had and JD had and all these other guys. But didn't your senior year, you and JD switch spots? Didn't you become the point and JD was the 2?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and JD
totally excelled both of your games.
In college. What's that?
I think it excelled both of your games.
I agree. And I was able to feed him. He was a good shooter. Yeah, he went on to play college, I think, and playing point guard. So it definitely suited, I think, both of us. I like to have the ball, and definitely was more of a pass oriented person. So it worked for our team. We had I think Marcus Thompson, who was obviously very talented, and Ryan Patswald. So it was a team that you had to feed everybody, if you will, and certainly was fun for me to be in that role.
Well, I think Frank, watching you play quarterback, and how you led the team on the field, I think that kind of helped transition. You're like, wait a minute, this guy needs to be the point for this year. Yeah,
that's funny, because I think junior year, like I said, we had a good basketball team, and I think Vince saw that, because I told you I was playing safety in football,
right? And
I think Vince saw the success on the basketball court, and he said, maybe we should try him at quarterback, and I think that's what prompted the change for me to play QB as a senior.
Well, let's get into that. Right, it's a great segue into this, because the next question I was going to ask you was talk about football, and and just let's go into your senior year. You as you said, you played quarterback, and an amazing thing that we've talked about is that you ran for 1,000 and threw for 1,000, and you went to that spread. And back then, wasn't that when we went to the spread? Was that year when your senior year, wasn't it? Is that correct?
Yeah, and so I was thinking about that, and so my sophomore and junior year, we ran the Nebraska triple option, and Vince had gone to Nebraska, learned the whole offense. And I think by Anderson standards at that time, we had two pretty disappointing seasons, including junior year. My junior year, we went to St. X and got clobbered. I mean, they really beat us badly. So in the off season, Vince said, I need to do something different if we're going to compete. Remember, we were in D1 at that time. We played Coleraine, St. X. And so he said, I got to do something different. He went down to Clemson and learned from Tommy Bowden, who was his friend, came back. I was spring of my junior year, and he sat me down. He said, I want you to play quarterback. This is going to be a brand new offense, new verbiage, all new plays. They're going to do no huddle, 5 wides. Wow. I mean, the exact opposite of the triple option and the exact opposite of the I formation that he'd been running with so much success with in prior years. So that was the announcement. We worked on it all summer and we were off and running.
What was that like? I mean, that had to have been incredible. Like you said, Anderson's so used to the I formation and all this stuff. And here you go. Everybody had to have been just pumped up and excited about that.
Oh, it was a blast. I mean, it was just so perfect for me too. I was a running QB, as you said, and this offense, I mean, you see it all the time now, but I think we were probably the first team in the state of Ohio that installed that. And that was all Vince. He was just so ahead of his time, so willing to adapt. And when he put that in, we had the perfect personnel. I could run. We had really good receivers. JD Collar, again, that name. And then we had Sean Murphy, who was a great player. Yep. Good friend of mine, Neil Rothfuss was a talented receiver. Mike Moreland, rest in peace. And so we had at least 4 or 5 receivers that were great. And then of course we had Kenny Rod as a tailback. And I mean, on offense, we were loaded. Chris Norwell was our left tackle as a sophomore. Tom Bache, who played at Case Western, was our left guard. So we just had talent everywhere.
Absolutely. And but the one game in particular, you said you got beat up by St. X the game before, and this year, I think you threw for like 500 something yards. And talk a little bit about that game. That's one game that I'll never forget.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a Brown, and they had smoked us the year before, and we were really crushing teams with the offense. It was really humming. We beat Turpin by a ton. We had beaten, I think Harrison was pretty good. We crushed them. The offense was putting up 40, 45 points every game, and we wanted to see what we could do against X. And I think we were beating them at halftime. Jumped out, and I think I had a long run. We had threw some long passes to JD, and I honestly, we had them beat. They came back, and we were, I think, losing by 4 points. I think the score was in the 40s. We're down by 4 with the ball driving, and unfortunately, I'll take the blame for it. But a late interception kind of ended the game. But it was such a battle, and coming off the year before, and seeing what we could do against a team like that, it was exciting.
Yeah, when you put up 500 yards against a GCL school, that's pretty good.
How many people do that?
Yeah, there's not.
Yeah.
Many.
And then actually the following week we went and played, and we were in the playoffs, first round of the playoffs against Coleraine at their place. I want to say they were number 1 in the state.
I do remember that.
And I don't really remember the game that well, but I was talking to my dad, and he was saying he thought there was probably 8,000 people there.
Oh yeah.
And we definitely were moving the ball on them again. I think they won the state that year, but we were moving the ball in the first half and had a lot of success. But they just had too much horsepower for us in D1. It was a depth thing, and again, Vince, I think, was smart to adapt and try to do everything we could to compete. But I was glad to hear that later classes played in D2 and had some more chances to play later in the playoffs.
Yeah, they and the one thing that's funny about that, Kenny, is that there's a kid that just graduated this year from Anderson. He was in our top 10 too as well. His name was Jackson Coon, and he against LaSalle, who was coming off a state championship. They played him in the playoffs this past year, and what he threw for almost 600 yards against LaSalle was like 500.
Oh my!
57.
Wow.
He had like
they
5
throw every down.
I mean, they do. They throw the ball. They barely run. I mean, it's but it was up until I think against a GCL school, you might have had it up until he tied you or went ahead of you on that one. So it was shows how great of a job you did back in the day.
Well, everything that all the success we had, it was all Vince. I can't say enough about the job that he did. I was laughing today. I was thinking about him, and he used to have a quarterbacks meeting every Sunday night. And so I think it was around like 6 or 7 in the evening. All quarterbacks, even underclassmen, would come, and we would get there, and we'd be saying to Vince, "Hey, how was that Bengals game today? What'd you think?" He would have no idea what you were talking about. He had watched game film of the team we were playing all day.
Yep.
And would have the entire game plan mapped out for the next week. Clearly had just been holed up in his office, that thing above the old garage back then.
Yep.
And it's just amazing how hard he worked, and how grateful I am today for everything I learned, from him and Coach Brandy as well.
Well, I would say that any player, yourself included, that if you didn't go on to play major Division I college football, you probably learned what it would have been like just playing under Vince.
I don't know what it would have been like, but I have to think that's right. I mean, he had position coach meetings, full weight training program, just the most organized, prepared person that you would ever meet in life. And I still take those lessons, in business now. And it's just such a good experience that he provided.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd say, the way that Vince came in there and started elevating the football program, and, you throw yourself in there, Kenny, and we've said this, Danny, talking about winning the state championship, and that state championship belonged to everybody. I mean, I didn't play football at Anderson, but I went there and I felt a part of it. But Kenny, you played there. Danny, you played there. And everything that you did there, Kenny, elevated the program even further to get to that point where they won a state championship, which no other school in Anderson's ever done. So it's a pretty incredible thing.
Well, I appreciate that. Certainly feel like a part of a tradition. They say the tradition continues, and I certainly felt that way.
So after high school, Kenny, talk to us about what you did, where'd you go, and what all you were involved with.
Yeah, so I got a lot of looks to play Division III football and basketball.
I'm sure.
And I had great parents, and they always said to me, just go wherever you're going to get into the best school, athletics aside. And so for me, that was going to Miami of Ohio. And I talked to the coach about being like a preferred walk-on the football team. And he said, well, we've got this guy in the locker room now. His name is Ben Roethlisberger. And if he doesn't work out, we'll give you a call. So I'm still waiting for the call, and I think it worked out better for Miami. I think it worked out better for him, and it worked out for me because I met my wife at Miami, and which brought me down to Florida, and I've been here. I don't really have any connection to Anderson anymore, sadly, but I've been down in Florida, living here in Naples for 16 years or so now. We have 2 kids. Just I wouldn't change a thing. We are so grateful and lucky to be here, and so the journey was exciting and it was great.
Well, tell us about your kids, Kenny. What ages are they, and what are they into?
My son Charlie's 6. He is playing basketball a little bit outside here with me, so we're learning the fundamentals, triple threat position, right? And then he's playing a little golf, playing a little t-ball, which is great. And then I have a beautiful little girl named May. She's 5. She loves dance. She's playing a little bit of golf, and so yeah, it's just wonderful.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
thank you.
That is incredible. So you always try to wrap this thing up with a couple last questions here, Kenny. And, one of the things is, what I know you haven't been back in Anderson in a while, but what is so special to you about Anderson and growing up during those days? I know you talked a little bit about Vince and the influence he's had on you, but talk a little bit about how special it was growing up in Anderson Township.
Yeah, I just think that the, Friday Night Lights environment for football games, I just think that's so cool. My brother-in-law is actually an assistant coach at Pickerington Central, they're like a powerhouse.
Sure.
I think they lost to St. X last year.
Yeah.
And so I go to his games every once in a while. And I got to say, it's similar. I just remember those Friday nights, the lights, the sunset would be coming down. You see the bright lights when you go into the parking lot, and the fact that the whole town was there supporting the kids. I just think that that's the coolest thing. And I just always remember both going as a kid and being so excited to watch those games, and then being able to thankfully be a part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's always a great memory, and something I'll never forget too. But so talk a little bit about maybe your favorite high school memory, and then, maybe either a favorite teacher or coach that you had at Anderson.
Gosh, so favorite high school memory. Coach Ellis, you'll appreciate this. I loved UC basketball camp.
There you
And
go.
every year, Coach
Yeah.
Brandy would take us. It was an overnight camp, and talk about bonding with your teammates. I remember. So we would usually play like 4 or 5 games every
Yep.
day. So we played 4 or 5 games, come back to the dorms, you'd eat some pizza. And I remember one night playing video games with Chris Norwell. We had snuck in like a Nintendo in the dorm room, and we played basically the video game equivalent of the board game Risk. So we had, he was probably 14, 15 years old. I think I was 17. And we're playing like this geopolitical video game after 5 basketball games. The next, we were up all night playing. Then the next day we go out, we play 5 more games. And I think we were carrying the heaviest load, obviously, at that time. And, but it's just, being with your buddies and the locker room, that kind of stuff is what, you always remember. And certainly for me, that was the case.
Absolutely.
Cool.
What about any
favorite teacher?
Yeah.
So I would say, gosh, there's so many good ones. Dan Bartholomew for sure. Man, I'd have to go with him. He was, I think, very entertaining, very different as a teacher than he was as a coach. But I always appreciated being around him.
Yeah.
And I think obviously you've mentioned 2 of your coaches already, and Frank and Vince. Those are 2, and Coach Ellis there, pretty special coaches there. And Kenny, I'll tell you what, man, it's I loved calling your games, and what was great for me is I had the luxury. I used to always go Kenny, and it didn't matter which one it was between you and Kenny Rod. So
that's right.
That was a big running joke there for a while, because everybody's making fun of me because I kept screaming at nonstop all the time. But it was
that's so funny.
Yeah, I enjoyed, and I'm just so glad that that you reached out to us, and that we're able to get a hold of you, and hopefully we can keep in touch. And if you ever come in town, I know Steve would love it, and Frank, we can get Frank together, and we can just
bring your boys.
Go out and bring your kids. We can just kind of hang out and catch up. We would love to catch up with you.
I'd enjoy that, and I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for the good work you're doing. It's great to see a lot of the old people from Anderson sharing their stories and making sure the legacies get preserved. So that's fantastic. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, Kenny. So we really, really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll definitely keep in touch. I'm going to have you try to come up one year for the golf outing, man. You're got a lot of guys golfing in this golf outing that see, I'm sure.
Well, I got to warn you, I'm a ringer, so
that's all right.
He's on my team.
Hey, Kenny, you got to.
I'd love to do it.
Steve and I are on a team together, and it's pretty brutal.
It's
really
happy
all
going.
right, well,
Maybe
I'll be on your team. I'll help you out.
No, we appreciate it, Kenny. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up here. So for Steve Ellis, Dan Albers, and Kenny Riddell, you've been watching This Week in Anderson. We'll catch you next week.